Music is multi-dimensional, diverse, and part of human life, and an essential component to a well-balanced education because music is part of everything we do and in every culture. It helps propel students in all parts of their studies, plus helps and teaches how to collaborate with others and work in teams. Music gives you a glimpse of other cultures and musical styles. It also intensifies students' critical thinking skills, which is why, when engaging in music, many parts of the brain are activated. Music is such a huge part of our beings that it even helps people with language or learning disabilities. I know for me, if I didn't have music in my life, my comprehension and reading skills would be at a much lower level, since I recently discovered that I myself have had a reading and writing disability this whole time. That made me think somehow through all the things that were happening in that time, learning music kept me on a sustainable path and became my refuge. And if I didn't have that, then where would I be now? Music teaches us all how to love unconditionally, and that is exactly what everyone needs to learn in order for us as a society to advance and care for one another. For me, music is not just an elective. I see it as the driving force to help create a better community while also helping us question where we have fallen short as a society and how we tell history moving forward. That is why we as educators have to start talking and taking an interest in our students' lives and not just care about a musical outcome. That is why I lean towards a progressivist approach, since I believe music can be used to educate the whole being, not just the mind. My philosophical approach comes from taking parts of different music philosophers. For instance, I agree with Estelle Jorgensen that music learning is part of life and believes that utilizing different views or musical approaches of the contemporary world for music education, since it's a necessity, and know that there are many skewed views on how to approach music teaching or what music should be presented or taught to children to classify their education as credible or standard. I would agree with Paulo Freire and his concerns for the oppressed and making sure to emphasize a dialogue as an important aspect of instructing and learning. I also believe there should be a balance between the essentialist and progressivist views. Bennett Raymer falls into the essentialist view, where he says we need to understand and value critical analysis, which is an aesthetic approach to learning, such as understanding through listening and analyzing music. I agree with Raymer to an extent, but I would disagree with him that the aesthetic approach is the only right way to critically analyze music in order to gain understanding or knowledge, which leads me to the progressivist view, which David Elliott falls under and highlights the importance and benefit of learning by doing things, such as experimenting and making mistakes in the process to give them the opportunity to reach a greater outcome on top of listening and analyzing music in order for students to gain self-growth, self-knowledge, and enjoyment. He believes music is valuable and notable because it sets in motion the self to higher levels of complexity. I lean towards David Elliott's views and music teaching approaches, since I can relate to music making and learning by doing from personal experience, and how it exposed me to so many musical avenues, styles of teaching and performing. Elliott also does not limit musical works to scored compositions. They may also be improvisations. He also asserts that one cannot properly engage in music listening without also having some experience in music making. However, in this situation, I would disagree, since there are plenty of people that may engage in music listening without having much or any experience in music, since we don't need an instrument to feel rhythm, understand the feelings and experiences that music provokes. My approach and understanding of student learners would be through Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. It teaches us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. It's crazy that before this theory, people used to think children were just miniature versions of adults and thought the same way. Ooh, how people were wrong. We learned from Piaget that children are actively constructing their own understanding of the world, so as their bodies grow, their minds grow as well, which he came out with the 4 stages of cognitive development. While I do agree with his 4 stages of cognitive development, he does not take into account how our environment makes us feel as a person, being able to trust others as a part of growing up, being able to gain your own autonomy and not being controlled. Erik Erikson points out how the way you grow up can lead to the person they will become. Children should have the opportunity to form their own identities by exploring more possibilities in a safe space without the fear of being shamed or judged. If they don't get the opportunity to explore new experiences, it can cause confusion of not knowing how to contribute to society or the feeling of not fitting in, since during the adolescent stage we are seeking purpose, and if that is not being met, it can cause them to rebel against their environment and eventually feel stuck/stagnant or unproductive. Again, like I mentioned before, these stages can be disrupted by outside environments if children are feeling misunderstood or going through trauma of their own. So we as educators have to care and be mentors to our students. Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi talks about the 3 H's: head, hand, and heart, or the whole child approach of teaching, as it's called. Head is used to talk about the theory and analysis that is done with music. Hand is about a student's participation in solo or ensemble playing. Lastly, heart is about educating our hearts. His progressivism way of teaching advocated a whole child approach to education, so we take into account the whole being, not just the mind, which I very much agree with. Highlighting the importance of a student's involvement and encouraging students to initiate their own experiments from learning by doing. Learning to play an instrument or sing or how to compose has no benefit if the student can't experiment. The point of doing in the classroom is to experiment and learn from the outcomes. Music should be a safe space away from judgment and shame. I will approach my teaching style along the side of the progressivist view, since I believe music can expand stylistic boundaries related to genres of music. My teaching will involve using the new core standards that include creating, performing, and responding, while also addressing that even with the new core standards have not yet added any updates on not making classical music the only foundation we expose our students or deem as of value, since there's so many other cultures of music that make rhythm an important aspect of teaching just as much as classical music does when it comes to harmony. Teaching music should be a means of enculturation and should be at the heart of the school's curriculum, not just an after-school program. As a teacher, I will use parts of many pedagogical methods from Emile Jacques Dalcroze, Shinichi Suzuki, and Sultan Kodali, which includes believing that children should be exposed to music in an early age as possible, while realizing that not everyone has the means or live in an area that has a music program. Oral and rhythm training, since the voice and our sense of rhythm are both foundational aspects of music making. Using movable do for solfege, using applicable improvisation as early as possible, and musical literacy, while also recognizing that it's not the only way to create, since learning by rote is also very important and encourages experimentation, and having students think and learn on the spot. In order to make sure I'm growing professionally and musically, I will continuously keep exposing myself and my students to many types of musical repertoire and different cultures, while also taking into account the lives of each of my students, since I need to make sure they are feeling heard and know that they can talk to me or ask for help at any time. I will continue to perform and work on my craft and make sure my musicianship is up to par in order to play in multiple styles of music. When learning from me, I want to make sure that students get multiple views of what a person can do as a working musician, music educator, or even studio teacher. Teaching them to be musically literate while also having them be able to use their ears as part of their musical compass in order to help them with improvisation and make quick decisions on their own. Making sure that I stay well connected with great musicians while also signing up as a member of the National Association for Music Education, NAFME, and go to conferences in state or internationally to continue my professional musical education development. The Every Student Succeeds Act recognizes music and arts as an important factor in a well-rounded education. So we need to make sure that we as a people, musicians, and educators have to keep changing and exposing ourselves to new styles of music and teaching approaches and synthesizing it to our teachings and curriculum, and not just expose Eurocentric musical views. It is delusional to think that the teachers are the masters in their fields when we actually just know aspects of our practice and are still trying to figure it out as we go. I'll leave you with this. We need to remember that each student is capable of learning and that music is a fundamental component and right to human existence, which has been here since the beginning of time and will continue on after we pass. Thank you.